Hear ye, the ancient and honorable Cable Commission is now in session. How's that for a beginning?
Pretty good, Orville.
The meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Sacramento cable system. Today's meeting is being cablecast live and will be repeated Saturday at noon. A VHS copy is also available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the Commission should fill out a speaker identification form located on the back table and give it to the secretary. Just bring it forward, and there are additional copies up here. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the Commission and state your name for the record. Roll call, please.
Grantman Johnson. Toby Johnson.
Here.
Collins. Here. Yee.
Here.
Cox.
Present.
Castanis.
Here.
Panay.
Good.
Fletcher.
Here. There is a quorum present. Item number 1 is the election of chairperson and vice chairperson for the ensuing term. Is there any person who wishes to raise any question on procedure before we move to actually nominating and electing?
I have a question.
A question from Terry.
Rich, normally we have begun, April 1st? Is that the beginning of the term?
That's correct. Yes. You see the staff report, other than twice, I believe, in our history, April 1st has been the initiation of the new chairmanship.
Okay.
Do you wish to raise any question, any member of the Commission, as to whose turn it is? We have had a kind of lady-gentleman agreement that we take turns, city, county, and so on.
Well then, sir, whose turn is it?
County.
It's the county's turn. So it's the county's turn, sir?
Looks like the county.
Nominations are now open for
I nominate
chair.
Mr. Toby Johnson, sir.
I'd like to second that nomination and encourage Toby to take that.
Move nominations closed, sir.
Call one question, please.
Oh, wait a minute. The chairman has a part in this.
You nominate somebody, Orville.
Are there any further nominations?
Toby, do you want to serve or not? Or do you want? What do you want to do?
I really don't care. It's fine if that's what you wanted. How about you, Isla? Wouldn't you like to do it? Probably would. Want me to nominate you?
Nomination is Toby Johnson. Are there further nominations? The nominations are closed. All those in favor of Toby Johnson as chairperson, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Toby, we congratulate you. Effective April 1st, you're the new chair for the ensuing term.
Orville, I can't tell you how... No, honestly,
I know you can't, because profanity is not acceptable.
Profanity is one of my main lines of resort when I get into trouble. But not being in trouble, I'm delighted. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's more appropriate. Now the nominations are open for vice chair for the ensuing term.
I would nominate Jimmy Yee.
No, how about Mr.
No, come on, Jimmy Yee.
I'll second the nomination. How about Mr. Panay?
Mr. Yee has been nominated. Is there any further nomination?
That gives you over a year to get used to the joys of public office, Mr. Yee.
Thank you.
Move the nominations are closed.
Been moved.
I think I'm already
closed.
enjoying
Second.
it too
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The nominations are closed. Those in favor of Mr. Yee for vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Mr. Yee, we congratulate you for the ensuing term. You are the vice chair. Thank you very much.
And he'll make sure that Toby never misses a meeting.
Jimmy, I'm glad to have you as the backup. I'm sure you'll have plenty of opportunity to show your ability.
I think Mr. Cox said the same thing when I was elected vice chair of the Flood Control Agency.
That's true.
We now move to item 2, request for proposals, community programming, public access resources. Rich, would you like to make some summary comments first?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members, good afternoon. In recommending to the chair the agenda for today's meeting, I worked hard in trying to get a logical order, a progression of decisions for you today. Item 2 is a follow-up to your request for request for proposals that we initially discussed at last month's meeting. The schedule recommended in the RFP requests a decision today in order to bring back on track, if this is your desire, the community programming or the community programming and public access functions. I believe you should have you have requests from the audience to present. My recommendation is that upon receipt or when you're concluded comments from the audience, I'd be happy to summarize key points of the RFP. Again, this was requested by you. Staff responded in the best form available. If there's any questions before then, I'd be happy to take those now.
Mr. Chairman, I had raised the issue at the last meeting that if we were going to go out with an RFP, that we ought to do it for all of the channels that this commission has any authority over. I still believe that. I don't think this RFP addresses that particular issue, however.
That's right, Mr. Cox. It doesn't. At your request, there is an item on the agenda to address that issue.
Okay.
That's on as item number 6 on your agenda.
Do you think it should not go in this particular? That's I guess that's my question.
Yeah. In my reflecting on the issues at hand, I felt that the direction to me, Mr. Cox, was specific in December to bring you an RFP, in a specific one, and I've done that. And that your request was for a more general decision that was broader than this, that would encompass this as well. And that was why I structured the agenda as I did. At your discretion, you can adjust the agenda.
Is there other comment related to Mr. Cox's question?
I have a comment. I attempted last month to not go ahead and go the RFP process. That was not the decision of this commission. I wonder if there is some other format that commissioners would be interested in rather than opening up for RFP. The thought of consolidating all of the grantees into one group has been discussed over the years. That is something that I have thought might work. Are there any other configurations that would preclude us or not necessitate us going out for RFP? For example, is there something else that we could do in the interim to not go out and have an RFP? Is there some other putting these together in some other way that is of interest to any of you?
Well, Mr. Castanis, I think I agree with what you had said the last meeting, where I was totally satisfied with the presentation by the current grantee. However, what Mr. Castanis said about grouping all the grantees together doesn't make me too excited.
That doesn't do anything to you, okay?
No.
Other comments? Would you like to move forward to hear statements from the public at this time, members of the commission?
That should be interesting.
Sure. We have quite a large number. We are, as privilege of the chairman, I'm going to declare a 1-hour limitation on the presentations if we have to go that long. There is such a great list of people who wish to speak. So I'm going to ask that, as far as possible, if you agree with previous speakers, say it and maybe not repeat all the words again. I want to say one thing that captured our interest last time. We do know that our agency that we're discussing today did win a lot of awards up through 1989, and we were impressed with that. You don't need to repeat that today. And there may be other elements that have already been stated many, many times. So we're going to have a 3-minute extension of time for each speaker, and I will also call the second person to speak, who then can move forward with a minimum of delay after the first person has finished. So the first speaker is Jeff Herdlicka, and to follow that person is Steve Hoffman. So we would ask both to come forward, and the second one could perhaps sit right down in front there. Jeff, it is your turn. Name and where you're from and so on.
My name is Jeff Herdlicka. I'm a resident of Sacramento. I produce a New Order for the Ages, a program on planetary enlightenment and world transformation, which has been one of the longest running shows on Access Sacramento. In addition to my own show, I have produced sets of 3 shows from the Dixieland Jazz Jubilee in 1990 and 91, regularly assisted on other series such as Health in America and Live from Cafe Montreal, and recently produced a revolutionary educational video, Mathemagic, a gently geometric journey into 4 dimensions. Through these experiences, I have come to appreciate what a priceless asset Access Sacramento is to this community. It offers people affordable access to the channels of communication in a cooperative setting. These opportunities are especially important to the public as the mass media becomes more homogeneous and less open to alternative views of reality. I am particularly encouraged to see the growing number of teenagers and even preteens who are learning the process of television production through the outreach of Access Sacramento volunteer producers. To make sense of the information deluge we are experiencing, understanding the process of creating a video production is as important as computer literacy, and the ability to create and critique video productions will be an important component of the new educational structures which are struggling to be born. Why is this local treasure, rated tops of the nation by its peers twice in the last 4 years, being asked to justify itself or lose its funding when it should be commended for providing independent access to information and arts to the community? Apparently, the answer is 2 hours of programming out of the thousands of hours cable cast over the last years, which pose questions about sexuality. Instead of using these programs as a springboard to deal with the real issues of sexuality and its abuse in our society, a very small proportion of people are proposing killing the messenger because they're unwilling to deal with the message. I find this uproar very perplexing in light of the availability and profitability of the Playboy channel and the movement of what used to be called softcore pornography into mainstream advertising. This is an issue of free access to information versus corporate profit. Renewing Access Sacramento's contract will allow this nationally recognized public resource to continue empowering people to cooperate and express their truth, and providing information that the mass media and the corporate financial conglomerates behind them would prefer that the people not see. The Bible says, where there is no vision, the people perish, Proverbs 29:18. Access Sacramento provides the community an opportunity, not just to see visions of a transformed world, but to create them. Your decision comes down to affirming the politics of money and business as usual, or affirming the right of the people to dream, and to share their dreams through cooperative effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. And next following will be Jerry Paulson.
I'm Steve Hoffman, a Sacramento resident, also a volunteer community radio producer for KCBL, where over 70 different radio programs are produced every 2 weeks by members of the Sacramento community. We have found community radio an excellent method of involving and empowering individuals and community groups, and we're just scratching the surface. Community radio can help all of us during the current era of government limitations and spending cutbacks. Radio can help fill the void caused by the recent reduction of services everyone is experiencing by allowing concerned individuals and groups the opportunity to use cable radio as a community network specializing in issue transmission without the restrictions of commercial radio or television. The potential community radio Sacramento has is limitless. It allows a much faster on-the-air time than cable television. It doesn't require an army of technicians taping the show, and it can reach select audiences attuned to the topic. The subject matter can be explored in depth and is not limited to the commercial restraints again. Members of the Sacramento community can use this resource to help attain their goals, and others can learn from the successes experienced by them. We are fortunate to have this valuable resource available in Sacramento, as it fits in with the political and economic realities of the 90s. In the request for proposals, radio is not mentioned. I'd like to know what your intention is for community radio in the Sacramento area. Is it to be continued, disbanded, or what? I would ask each of you cable commissioners to ask during this request for proposal phase the following questions of franchise candidates to assure quality community radio in Sacramento. Number one, what are your specific plans for cable radio use? 2, how often will the community be able to access this resource? 3, how often will the programs be accessible to the community? 4, will radio programming be inaccessible to the community, and if so, why? And 5, how will you help promote to sustain radio programming? I believe resolving these questions early in advance by prospective candidates will eliminate any conflicts arising later on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jerry Paulson, to be followed by David Waddell.
Hi, I'm Jerry Paulson. I'm here as a representative for the Alliance for Community Media, which is a national organization supporting public educational and governmental access. For your information, you have a 2-page letter that was directed to Mayor Cerna from our national chair, Andrew Blau, back in January. And I wanted to alert the Commission to the fact that on the present course that it is engaged, that is to go out to RFP and possibly select another organization or eliminate Access Sacramento entirely, could result in a loss of $1 million of income to the City and County of Sacramento. To be specific, in July of '94, the National Convention has been planned to be held here in Sacramento. With the climate and the threat of not having a viable host for that National Convention, our Executive Director, Tony Lewis, in Washington, D.C., as well as Andrew Blau, are actively searching for an alternative site within the region. And the reasons for this is that we are on a short timeline. As of July 23rd, should our arrangements with County of Sacramento, and in particular the Hyatt Hotel, fall through, we, the Alliance for Community Media, are liable for heavy financial penalties for that breach of that contract. If Access Sacramento is in place, if it remains a viable host, up until that time, we have some leeway to reconsider holding the National Convention here. It's our hope that that can be worked out, and to that end, I would have a radical suggestion that in light of the input that you have received as to the excellence of Access Sacramento, that the Commission withdraw its intention to issue an RFP for Access Sacramento and use that time between now and July 1st to negotiate any problems that you might have with that organization. As I pointed out at the last meeting, evaluation by RFP is not an orderly way to proceed, and I would hope that the Commission seriously think about the consequences of its actions, not just for Access Sacramento, but for the Sacramento community at large before it proceeds further.
Thank you, David Waddell. Joseph Farrell will follow.
Good afternoon. My name is David Waddell. I'm the State Director for the American Family Association. And the reason that I'm here today is to support the request for proposal and also to share my concern about the violation of the public trust that has been taking place on this access channel. In specifics, I draw attention to around 10 o'clock in October when very explicit rape scene was aired over the program, explicit homosexual relationships being shown and discussed. And in our country, we have seen the American people beginning to get pushed to the edge of where they feel that it's time to start doing something about it. At the American Family Association, we recently ran an article in the paper that said, we are outraged, and it's time to do something about it. We have had millions of responses to that about the sex, the violence, and the profanity on television. Right now what I'd like to do is quote from the Congressional Record, the Honorable U.S. Senator Robert Byrd, Democrat, West Virginia. He says, quote, "The airways over which network and local television broadcasting are being belong to me and millions of people like me who object to being assaulted by language and depictions of behavior that I would never countenance in my home. He goes on to say, with each dose of vulgarity, profanity, pornography, promiscuity, assault, murder, and other violence, we become less and less uncomfortable with those crimes and vices until at last our consciences lose the ability to object to them. We are teaching our children that the basest level of human behavior is the norm of life, not an aberration. In the past, courtesy and politeness were the norm. Vulgarity, profanity, and violence were the exception. Today we're seeing those things turned around. The fastest growing group committing violence, sexual and otherwise, against children is now children. Where are these children picking this up? It's from the television set overwhelmingly. We can document as much as you'd like to see, but some of it comes from studies like this one, pornography, its effects on family, community, and culture. We would encourage you to support the RFP, and also I would just close with pointing out that documentation of my position on this sex violence and profanity. The American Family Association has recently called a boycott against S.C. Johnson Company as the leading sponsor of sex violence and profanity on TV. This is the fourth company that we have addressed on this issue. The first three succumbed after they received millions of letters and phone calls. People began to boycott with their money the products of those companies like S.C. Johnson Company. So we would encourage you to support that, putting this out to bid, and we thank you for your time.
Thank you. There is a comment I would like to make. The thrust of this RFP is not because of 2 hours of material that some were offended by. It is how can we as a commission guide the expenditure of $500,000 of public funds to get the most out of the $500,000 that is expended. And that is our big thrust. And if you want to speak to that today, it would be appreciated. But it's a lot more than a few hours of programming. And now, Mr. Farrer, to be followed by Janet Gross.
Good afternoon. I'm Joseph Farrer. I'm a journalist, so I have the utmost respect, even reverence, for the First Amendment. In fact, I'm paid between $150 and $200 an hour to testify as an expert witness in high-profile First Amendment trials. Today, I'm here at my own expense as a concerned parent to protest the delivery of unscreened, unedited, highly offensive material into our homes by Access Sacramento. On a weekday last spring, about 3:15 p.m., I was scanning the cable channels in search of suitable programming for my two young daughters. Fortunately, they were not in the room at the time because when I got to public access, the lead singer of a heavy metal rock group was screaming an obscenity, the F word for your information, over and over and over again into the microphone. This went on for several minutes, and it was obviously something that the group did for shock purposes only. I think it's safe to say that no one could interpret any artistic merit in the performance. Now, as a parent trying very hard to raise my children with good values, I deliberately don't subscribe to any cable channels known for excessive obscenity, profanity, vulgarity, graphic violence, and explicit sex. I was literally fuming with rage that this kind of programming was being rammed down my throat and our community's throat on basic cable service. When I called, Sacramento Cable abruptly explained to me that the company had no authority over the programming on channels 17 and 18 and directed me to Access Sacramento. When I phoned that office, my inquiry was handled with nothing short of contempt. A woman in the office who refused to provide her name told me there was nothing legally obscene about what I had witnessed. Condescendingly, she told me this kind of speech was protected by the First Amendment. I attempted to explain to her gently that she had no idea of what she was talking about. For instance, she had no knowledge of the Supreme Court's Miller standard, and she wasn't interested in listening. Her mind, like others I would find at Access Sacramento, was made up. Though they're supposed to be representing the public, they treat the public like some kind of nuisance, like bourgeois boobs who are good for nothing but subsidizing the enlightened propaganda efforts. It was obvious right away that at Access Sacramento there's no tolerance of other points of view or any sensitivity to the feelings and values of others. Ron Cooper, too, insisted that the program I have described was protected by the First Amendment and that no one had the moral or legal authority to censor it. Mr. Cooper also seemed to want to make it as difficult as possible for me to find out how Access Sacramento worked and how I might become a part of the process of reforming it. For instance, when I requested the agency's bylaws and other relevant documents, he told me he would mail them to me only if I was willing to pay copying charges. I want to urge that the current relationship between the county and Access Sacramento be terminated at the earliest possible time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. Janet Gross, to be followed by Robert Keller.
Good afternoon. The last few times when I spoke to you, I came on my own behalf. Today, I'm coming to address you on behalf of quite a few citizens of this community. I have here about 1,300 signatures on a petition that we circulated. Mr. Fletcher, you said that the thrust today is not about what materials have been on this TV station, and I disagree with you full-heartedly, because I think the problem here is that a lot of us have lost faith with Access Sacramento because of their response to the program, our complaints about the programming that was put on TV. The task force that was set up was a joke because it was comprised of liberal people who didn't include people of other views on the task force. They want to put these kind of programs on late night hours. It's unacceptable. This is public funding. You have a responsibility to the people in your community. We don't accept this kind of programming on TV. It's vulgar, it's offensive, it breaks down the moral fiber of this country. We don't agree to the idea of having a lockbox. This is our public station. Why should we have to go to the effort of getting a lockbox to take something out of our home? You shouldn't be putting offensive things into our home. AIDS education is very important. They need to pre-screen what they put on for AIDS education because they put some really vulgar things on TV. The language is gutter language. They don't need to talk about that kind of stuff on TV that way. Yes, they need to educate people. They don't have to be so disgusting about it. I encourage you to put it out to bid. Free enterprise. I don't like what I see on that TV station. I think that the quality of many of the programs is very mediocre. I know that they've given a lot of people in the community the opportunity to put things on TV. Whoever comes on board and does that in the future would also be giving the same people the opportunity, but they might set some standards, a system of checks and balances, some controls, so that this sort of thing doesn't come on TV anymore. It's offensive. We don't like it, and we're not going to put up with it. So I encourage you to put it out to bid, and perhaps Access Sacramento will get the contract again, but if they do, there better be a system within their contract that ensures that this kind of thing will not be on TV again. Thank you.
Thank you. I think as a matter of interest, the members of the audience as well as commission members would like to hear what it is that the 1,500 people put their signature to. And the proposition is to Orville Fletcher, Chairman of Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission, programming on taxpayer-funded Sacramento County, Access Channel 18, such as The Dinosaurs and The Bed, does not meet local community standards. Applying contemporary community standards, the material as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. The material depicts or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by applicable law. The materials as a whole lack serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Since the Access Channel is funded with public funds, the citizens of Sacramento appeal to the Commission to use those dollars in a responsible manner and to eliminate obscene programming from the publicly funded Access Channel. In addition, we, the citizens of Sacramento, appeal to the Commission to follow the example of network television in reducing violence. The simulated rape scene, with its accompanying violence, is an example of programming which is unacceptable to our community and is a gross misuse of public funds. That is the reading of the text to which people affix their signatures.
I have a question, Mr. Fletcher.
A question, Terry?
I'd like staff to respond to the comment that these are public funds. We've had this discussion here as a commission before, and I think it would be good if that were repeated. The source of funds specifically versus what the public normally perceives as public funds. Would you make that clear in terms of where the money comes from and the definition of what public funds are as they pertain to cable television as opposed to tax dollars that the community is used to paying?
Well, these are not taxpayer funds. That phrase has been used. They're not tax funds. They are franchise fees, which is your rental for the public rights of way. However, it has been our legal position that once they come into your possession, they are public funds. What you do with them from that point forward, they don't lose their character as public funds. But they're not, sometimes people have used the phrase taxpayer funds, and they're not technically that because they're not derived from taxes. They're really right-of-way rental, which you receive. But once they come into your possession, they are public funds.
Thank you, Brent.
Robert Keller, to be followed by Richard Taliaferro.
Robert Keller. Yeah, I'm coming.
Well, if you want to turn the mic this way, I'll stand next to it. I'll disappear behind it, I'm afraid, forever. Okay, thank you. You know, it never fails. Just when you say, Mr. Fletcher, that what we're here to deal with is the RFP, not the quote-unquote indecency programs that were on Access, we're followed up by 3 protests immediately about the indecency shows and no discussion on the RFP. My name is Robert Keller. I'm the Executive Director of the Disabled American Rights Network. We are a membership organization comprised of physically challenged individuals and seniors, and we're kind of guardian angels of this constituency. As a community programmer and as the Executive Director of our organization, I've always said that what we try to do is have our organization thought of as the company to use as a scissors to cut through the red tape of bureaucracy when we advocate for people. Well, we cut through the red tape of the bureaucracy of the Sacramento Cable Commission, and I'm sorry, but what we found under that was more red tape. So we cut it again. And what we found under that red tape was yet more bureaucracy. And when we cut it again, what we found that time was of a little more smelly nature, and we decided not to go in any further than that. We're only dealing with those 2 right now. It comes to my mind that Richard Espostos and all of you members up there of the commission, that your job is to oversee and facilitate all of the public access programming and stations that are operating here. I have seen you admonish Access Sacramento on numerous occasions and spend much time pointing out that which is wrong. I've watched Access Sacramento do a very useless, silly dance trying to figure out what you wanted and going and creating a task force that you never asked for and that kind of other conciliatory behavior. It seems to me that leadership and responsibility from this commission is what is called for, either with the new RFP or with the old management company in office. It seems to me that when you admonish someone and tell them, don't do this and don't do that, that you should be showing them alternatives what you have gathered from your communities as to what they want, including budgetary considerations, including programming considerations. I've liked what I've seen here today, because for the first time, I feel like the Commission is really getting involved in this community. Each of you on a personal level. I do see your predicament. I do not find you to be a panel of bad guys. I just request that the dialogue continue, that more participation is made on behalf of yourselves and all the members of the community, and that we come down with an RFP situation that will please everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. Mr. Taliaferro, to be followed by Robert Smith.
Yeah, my name is Richard Taliaferro. I've produced a program on Access Sacramento for the past 12 months called Profiles of Labor, which deals with labor issues that are rarely ever on television, the network televisions. I'm also a member of the Union Producers and Programmers Network. I'm one of about 22 producers across the country that are using public access to discuss certain labor issues such as free trade, sexual harassment in the workplace, although we have never actually had any type of graphical examples of that on the show or any bad language at any time. I'm currently working with an area union that has an apprenticeship program but has no budget to have their apprentices learn the skills that they need to obtain, which is video production. Access Sacramento has kindly offered the use of their facility to train these apprentices in video production. That's one thing I can say. Another thing I'd like to say on that is I'm a graduate of the Sacramento Job Corps program, where I learned the trade of heavy equipment. I went through a 4-year apprenticeship from that, and this has been an opportunity for me to go back and videotape some of the opportunities that are available in apprenticeship, because nobody else is doing that and putting it out to the public. I was 22 years old before I realized there were apprenticeship programs. I've gotten a lot of positive response from my programs. We have never had any bad language or nudity or anything else on the program, and I do take deep offense to that petition which states that there is no social value in the programming. I'd like to read a resolution that was passed unanimously by the Union Producers and Programmers Network Convention in San Francisco in December of 1992. Labor, community access, cable TV, and censorship. Whereas cable TV now covers over 60% of households and is an important source of information for all segments of society, and whereas many corporate and anti-labor forces are seeking to limit the right of citizens, labor organizations, and unionists in having their viewpoint aired on public access TV, therefore be it resolved that UpNet, the Union Producers and Programmers Network, opposes all such censorship of public access television and supports the control of public access television by nonprofit corporations, and further opposes the restrictions of the rights of all nonprofit public access producers from replaying their programs on other cablecast outlets. Be it further resolved that UpNet encourages all unionists, locals, labor councils, district councils, state bodies, international, and the AFL-CIO to be opposed to censorship of all public access television channels and support the establishment of nonprofit corporations to run these community access channels. And with that, I would just like to add that the potential for job training and job awareness using public access has been done in other cities that have also added computer networking and bulletin board services to their access communities And while other cities...
You have exceeded your 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Would you provide our executive officer with a copy of that resolution that you read?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Robert Smith.
Hi, my name is Robert Smith. I'm the president of a video production company called Wall Smith Productions, and I've produced a couple tapes that have been shown on cable access, used their equipment once. I don't have a television. Both my kids go to Sacramento Waldorf School, which doesn't like children watching television at all, so I would suggest the fellow that was frustrated about what was on television to redirect his anger and maybe just turn off the TV and play with your kids. But the thing I really want to speak to here is it seems to me what's going on here is a kind of a problem of miscoordination amongst the different cable channels. And if you are going to put this thing up to RFP, I would endorse your suggestion that all of the channels compete, because there's a lack of cooperation and coordination of going on, a lot of anger and not communicating. And that's what this whole access thing is about, is providing voices to people who really have literally nowhere where to go. I mean, I'm a video producer, and lots of stuff I produce, I mean, it just doesn't air on television. And traditional television, it's nice to have an opportunity for a place that is a little more open-minded about that. This whole thing's in its infancy, as I see, and to get all upset about something like this, it's probably good for dialogue and discussion, but to rush into an RFP without kind of calmly talking and involve certainly groups that I belong to, International Association of Business Communicators. I have a community relations committee that I chair on the board. We would like to get involved in this thing, and I'm so sorry we haven't got involved sooner, but let's not rush into something. Give the opportunity to the community to kind of work together on this, and so we're doing something that's really intelligent as opposed to something that's kind of passionate, and I think we'll look back on regret. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This completes a list of those who requested the opportunity to speak. I'll now declare the public expression period to be complete, and we'll bring the discussion back to the commission members. Who would like to speak first?
I'd like to respond to some of what I've heard today by the community that's here, as well as some of the thoughts that fellow cable commissioners have put forward. And I think that the thing that's most important for me to understand is that there is a responsibility of this cable commission, whether we sought it out at the beginning or not. We now have the responsibility for, and that's 7 channels on this cable system here in Sacramento, on the Sacramento cable system. And those 7 channels, we're responsible for the allocation of those channels, which groups they go to. And to recap it, I just want to put it in perspective with staff. We have one channel that is devoted to religious programming, but we don't fund it.
That's correct.
It gets absolutely no public funds. Where those funds are really paid by everybody who hooks up to from basic on up on the cable system. We have 2 channels that are really reserved for education. Those 2 channels, as I understand it, are fully utilized by the education channel. We have one channel that historically has been another outlet. It's not a broadcast channel for the PBS system, but certainly the KVIE group has utilized one channel. And then we had 2 channels that were really public access channels. And that was the way that this cable system was bid, that was finally adopted as a franchise. But through a lot of lawsuits and settlements that are far too tangled to go into, this commission has ended up with the responsibility. And we're talking about the expenditure of public monies of $450,000 to manage 2 stations or 2 channels. And with that, I think, comes some real responsibility, both for us or whoever is chosen to program those channels. We're the ones that are going to be held accountable by the community. The community is asking questions now about how are the public access channels being managed. who gets to make the decisions, who's doing the programming. Well, it's obviously not us. We're not getting into the programming. But we certainly have a responsibility, $450,000 worth, for having a process that the community can point to with some assurance that they're going to have some trust in. And I don't find anything wrong with going through an RFP process when it involves that kind of money or those kind of channels. I think I didn't hear anyone challenging whether we should be putting that much money into public access at this point or not. And I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the RFP, but I certainly don't see anything wrong in an RFP that is going to look for this kind of an evaluation in whoever might want to put in a really creative and competitive bid for how to manage the programming on two very important channels. One of that is the extent to which the governing body is active and reflective of the community, and this is a large and culturally diverse community. The clarity and breadth of community programming and or public access goals as expressed in the budget and operating plan. That's the very gut of something. How much you budget, how much you operate, how you program, for what kind of programming you're going to have on there, blocks of programming, and especially as it relates to maximizing the quantity and quality of programs, cablecast on the allocated channels. The adequacy of the plans that group might have for securing additional outside financial commitment and support. That's going to be increasingly important, I think, as we get questioned more and more about why we're taking this money and spending it on cable as opposed to taking it and spending it to keep public health clinics open or create mental health programs for people. There could be competing demands for this money. The methods for ensuring accountability and effectiveness of the Commission's public resources, including policies for managing the content of programming as well as for minimizing administrative costs. The likelihood of success of plans for community outreach and marketing of community programming to the community and its subscribers. Those sound to me like good criteria on which to put something out for public bid. And I don't think for many of the groups who are feeling maybe threatened by this, I don't think that should create a threat to people. That's still a big chunk of money, $450,000, to ensure that the public's going to have a couple of channels that are truly going to be public access channels, and yet in some system that they'll know the governing body and they'll know how to ask for some degree of accountability, instead of just everyone saying, well, it's not our fault, we can't touch it. So, end of speech. I just think that it's important on those two channels to go for an RFP. And if you want to know why I don't want to go for a total one right now, is I think you've got fully programmed educational channels. You've got another fully programmed channel and KVIE, and I don't really think that you've got my gut tells me you don't have a choice on the government programming. That government programming channel is pretty much just public meetings all the time.
Other comments?
Mr. Chairman, let me just say to you that I believe that the RFP is an appropriate vehicle to determine whether or not this community is receiving the very best programming that's available as it relates to channels 17 and 18. But I've also had some communication with the educational consortium. I believe and while I believe they recognize that it probably, in all fairness, that that channel ought to, in fact, be put out on an RFP. As well as I haven't spoken with the religious. I have served as the chairman of the board of KVIE. But it just seems to me that of the channels that we have control over, that we should, in fact, take a look now at whether or not the channels that are utilizing the six channels, whether they're the very best that we can do. And it doesn't cost us anything, so to speak, to go out for those 6 channels as opposed to just 2 channels. I do think as I look at this request for RFP that the time frame is a little tight. 30 days, I think, even for the access, public access, is a little short. And from that standpoint, I could not vote for this particular item unless I was assured that we were going to go out for an RFP on every single channel, perhaps with the exception of Channel 14, which the content, of course, is sterling. And just a little levity there. But I do think that
at the rate
we might, as a matter of fact, that we do go out every 4 years, every 2 years for that particular channel as well, as you know, but for content at least. But it seems to me that we ought to go out and if we're going to look at this, let's not do this on a crazy quilt kind of fashion. Let's do this in total, and let's go out to see that we get the very best that's available, and then give it an opportunity to succeed.
Another question. Mr. Cox, are you suggesting then that the Education Consortium also go out to bid, and also Channel 7?
Education, Religious, KVIE 17 and 18.
Everything but 14.
Well, 14 is a kind of a referendum that's placed before the community every 2 years, and to the extent that they don't like the content that they see on 14, they remove those particular individuals.
But don't you think it could be done better by someone else if it were offered out for bid?
14?
Uh-huh.
I don't know the answer to that. I was only talking about the
content.
I was talking about the talent that was on 14.
No, that's content. I don't know if I'd call it talent or not.
It's possible.
But you are recommending then that all of them go out.
I think we need to look at every single channel.
Well, members of the commission, you know how I feel. I expressed my view last time, and I did at the beginning of this meeting. I'm not going to support this resolution. I don't think that we should throw out the baby with the bathwater. We have all admitted, and the board has also admitted, the Access Board has admitted there have been some problems. And they have agreed to follow the evaluation criteria that Isla read, and that we all agree are very good evaluation. And I think that's a tool we ought to use with the existing contract. And that the best way to go would be to renew Access Sacramento for another year. And then if you want to look at all of them next year, then I think maybe we'd better do that. But to pick the one contract out, have them go through the bid process and not the others, I think is a very important point, and I think Dave Cox has made that. It seems to me that we've got time to deal with this in a more early fashion if we take a look at possibly all of them, and spend the year to do that rather than pick this one out now. So I'm not going to support what we're doing either.
Yes. Mr. Chair, I have to reflect my comments in regards to this RFP, and it fairly repeats what Mr. Castanes said. At the last meeting, I was one of the 2 votes, along with Mr. Castanes, that opposed the RFP. From what I heard that was presented to this council, that Access Sacramento has really done everything the criteria for evaluation has asked for. The only thing that I may question is additional outside financial commitment. Maybe they've done that also. But with the award-winning type programs that's been produced by Access Sacramento and the task force recommendation to improve some of the concerns of the public, I feel Access Sacramento has done everything in their power. In fact, I'd even go further to say that after reading this item on the agenda and the list of agencies or organizations that this RFP is going to be sent to, I really am going to be interested in seeing just how many organizations is willing and able to present a proposal. But regardless, if this RFP goes out, I hope that Access Sacramento will still be in there pitching. So on that note, I'm going to just repeat again what Mr. Castanes says, that I am opposed to the RFP based on what I've heard in the past. I'm satisfied with Access Sacramento.
Would you then be satisfied with business as usual, as it has been conducted, as the way funds have been expended, and the non-supervision of programs that have occurred as in the past? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that, Mr. Chair, because during the last meeting, Supervisor Collin did reflect her concern about accountability. And at that time, I would suggest that this board should ask Access Sacramento to present to the commission all of their financial plans, and that we can review them, and then at the end of the year see whether they did in fact conform to them. In other words, if this commission is asking for more accountability, let's tell Access Sacramento that they're lacking that, and that they should change their actions and give us the information that this commission is asking for.
One of the things that I see wrong with that, Jimmy,
yes,
in terms of what they said last time,
yes,
when we had a discussion along these lines and when the task force reported, I thought that what I heard loud and clear from that task force and Access confirmed it, is that they are still not willing to do anything except see themselves as someone who takes programs and puts them on the air. I feel that for $450,000 contract, you do not just take any films that people turn in and put them on, and you don't have a plan for programming, a plan for screening, a plan for saying these are the types of program concerns in the community that we're trying to address. I think I gave some examples last time about the type of needs that people have expressed to us as commissioners that aren't being met by this whole cable system, whether that's in different languages or whether it's types of programming they can't find anywhere. I had hoped that an RFP, regardless of who responds to it, and I made an assumption that Access Sacramento would respond to it, would address those kinds of issues as it related to how they're going to take care of the community concerns, how they're going to address the open mic question of public access, how they're going to utilize time on that channel to the best, on two channels, in the best interests of the community, what kind of resources they're going to bring to that. What I heard last time, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was I heard distinctly that they were not planning to pre-screen. They were not planning to put that real stress on either quantity or quality of programming. I just heard a plan that sounded to me like it was going to be much like it's going now. And to me, while that's great in one sense, in terms of diversity of programming, it's not meeting the needs of the community. Some of the other needs. And so, that's a concern to me.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a short response?
Go ahead, please.
In answer to your comments, I thought that we had discussed that perhaps we can extend the contract for one additional year, and all of these constraints or requirements that we're asking Access Sacramento or anyone who responds to an RFP, that we could give them a chance to respond to these questions. In fact, during that particular year, we can ask them to make sure that they give us these things that you're just asking for, Isla. It's granted, Access Sacramento is something new. We're all feeling our way as to what's necessary, and every time we come up with something wrong, I think we should give them a chance to respond to it rather than just cut them off abruptly and say, okay, we're going to open this back up to the public. I don't believe we've given them that chance to respond.
No, but let's, I guess what I'm trying to put some emphasis on is that for the expenditure of $450,000, it seems to me that what we're saying is If we have independent producers out there and all people want to do is bring in tapes and get them shown, anybody could put that on a machine and run them helter-skelter, all during every day, day in and day out. And it certainly wouldn't cost $450,000 to do that. And what I'm really asking is a different approach towards the programming of the, and I don't mean that by content, I mean that by how they're assessing what are some of the things in the community that are and are not being met, and how they are taking that responsibility to address that. And I'm not talking about the individual content of programs when I use that word. I'm talking about the overall trying to meet some of the different needs in the community that are not being met on any of the other channels, and that what really public access channels were for.
Well, you know, related to this, now let's just suppose for a moment, take Mr. Yee's comment, that we did not issue an RFP for any other to bid on, but simply said to access, if you are to receive funds from us after June 30th of 93, this is the proposal to which you must respond positively, namely the RFP items that we have here before us today. Would that satisfy you?
Yes.
It seems to me we have to make a change when we can. Our old contractual group of years is over. This is a new era. We must take action when that era begins. Secondly, the need for funds by every department of every public agency is so great that we can't just say business as usual. We have to furnish proof to our public, I believe, that access or any other is using the money to the very best of the ability, the biggest bang for the buck, however you express it, and we want positive evidence in our files, standards by which this organization and eventually the others, as we find time, will be proceeding, and we can pin it down factually. At any point where those standards are not met, that organization ceases to obtain funds from it. Now, have I summarized what is in your thinking somewhat?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. If you set this RFP, excuse me, to Access Sacramento as a sole respondent and give them 1 year to live up to everything they submit here, I certainly would be happy to go along with it, because now Access Sacramento knows what they have to live up to. Up to now, Access Sacramento has never been asked to live up to these requirements, although morally maybe they should have been.
Mr. Johnson.
A question of the commissioners. I was intrigued by Mr. Cox's approach to this, which I find myself in somewhat agreement. Question I want to raise, though, is whether or not, with respect to this last discussion that you and Mr. Yee had, we have a clear understanding between ourselves and the other contractors on the other stations with respect to what is expected of them in terms of performance? Or is it only with respect to the access station here that we are concerned about performance? That's a very important question, because Mr. Cox raised a fundamental equity issue, and he also raised another question about cost effectiveness. I understood Mr. Cox's comments to have the following thrust. Why do you have one standard for engaging in a contract for access and a different standard for everybody else? If you're going to RFP out this contract, you got to RFP out all of the contracts. Now, the question of timing, I think you'd be probably open to looking at. I'm not sure if you do them at one time. But the basic principle, I think, is a sound one and a fair one. The other question becomes this issue of competition. Is there some merit in the notion, and I think there is, that competition could perhaps enhance the quality of the performance across the board with respect to all the persons with whom we contract in the community? We really don't know until we go out there and give people an opportunity to come to the table with a proposal and compare them. In the absence of competition, there is a danger of complacency and stagnation. I think that's implicit in this notion of interjecting competition into this whole process. So I guess the question I'm trying to get a handle on with respect to this commission's attitude is its attitude toward those 2 points. It's not just a question of throwing the baby out with the wash. That suggests that the notion of RFPing is just because you want to be punitive. If that's the intent, then we have to say so. But I think that there is another more salient reason why the question of going out with an RFP makes some sense, which has nothing to do with being punitive. It has to do with the quality of the services that we offer to the broad public, and ensuring that over time that we have some ability to change, to enhance the benchmark, if you will, by allowing others who would be locked out, in effect, if you didn't allow for some competition, a virtual monopoly. And the problematic that's attached to, I think, Mr. Costanza and Mr. Yee's approach is that it sets up an implicit monopoly, in that you really don't allow others an opportunity to see if they can invent a better mousetrap in essence. So I guess I'm trying to get a sense of where we are as a commission on those 2 broad public policy questions. Access aside in terms of the personalities involved or the past controversy.
Harry?
Mr. Johnson, I agree with you. I think that we have to treat them all fairly. And I think the comment you made about competition is very true. However, I think timing is very important. I don't think you can ask the community to prepare an RFP and for all of the stations in a short period of time.
I would agree with that.
I think you need to give them time.
That does not get to the issue of whether or not at some juncture it is appropriate to have that competition.
And I'm prepared to open them all up, as Mr. Cox suggested, but only in a timely manner. I think that's only fair.
What would be a timely manner for you?
I would want at least to announce a 6-month timeline for the community groups out there to take a look at what they can do and what they would like to submit. It's going to take that much time to get the diverse communities together, to come up with plans, and to meet those various needs. Access Sacramento has been functioning as a board for 5 years, and they have a broad constituency, meet a lot of needs out there. Now, maybe they are not broad enough. If another group is to do that kind of work, you can't get that kind of work done in a short period of time. So I'm open to your suggestions, and if we do that, I think a decent timeline other than 2 months would be appropriate.
Let me, Mr. Orville, if I may pursue Mr. Stannis' response to this further. Terry, with respect to the question of whether or not one can distinguish between the immediate RFP in front of us and the whole issue of the necessary time to gear up versus the notion of requiring a competitive bidding process for the other stations. It seems to me that there is an objective basis to make that distinction. In that, in light of the fact that we've been having this dialogue around access for some time, so it's not like we're springing something new. In fact, we've all been lobbied to one extent or another about not doing this or doing this. So clearly the community and Access's constituent groups have been well aware for some time that this is a possibility on the near horizon. I think that in terms of timing from respect to this RFP, quite candidly, objectively, the only salient point is the one that Mr. Cox raised. A month is probably too short for a response. But I don't think that the question of letting off RFP for this contract requires the kind of gear time that the others would. I think it would be a mistake to try to RFP everybody else right now. I think you have to stagger them perhaps and give some advance warning. But with respect here, I think the timing question is distinctly different.
If the timing is distinctly different, Mr. Johnson, then we are indeed treating one grantee differently from the other.
No, we're not. No, we're not. Because the difference is whether or not the difference is whether or not they have to go through a competitive process. The question of when they go through a competitive process is different from the question of whether or not they go through a competitive process. One's a timing issue, and one really is a fairness issue.
I think they're interwoven, and what I would like to see is the opportunity for the grantees out there to get together and come up with one one grantee rather than the three that we've got. In other words, I can see a lot of benefit by the Education Consortium, KVIE, and Public Access getting together and really coming together and not duplicating rent, not duplicating executive director salaries, not duplicating other staff, so they can get together and come up with one RFP that makes a great deal of sense and makes a great deal of economic sense in terms of the budget that we're dealing with. And that's what I was after over a year ago when Mr. Fletcher and I met with staff in this issue. We were hoping that consolidation would have taken place. We've tried to force it. It has not happened. I think that we have to give them that opportunity. By singling out Access Sacramento in this timeline, you're not giving the others that opportunity. And it is truly punitive. And I'm not prepared to do that. I think if you want to take a look at the whole thing, let's do it. Well, I think it has to be done in a way in which they can all...
Obviously, we don't agree on this question of what is and what is not punitive. And the notion of a consolidation proposal may not make sense, but it doesn't. It begs the question, it seems to me, fundamentally, of whether or not competition should be interjected across the board. And again, I think the question of timing is a secondary subordinate matter. That's why it's execution.
I understand what you said. Sure.
Okay.
We find ourselves at this juncture of having to give enough lead time to our organizations that we've been talking about so that they and their employees know what's going to happen. Therefore, we're probably not in a position to handle an analysis and an RFP on everything. We did select Access for the reason that it is one package. It's a big package. It brought itself to our attention in several ways, not just the programming material, but how effective they are using the funds. And it's about all we can handle in the spring of the year when every one of us sits on other agencies and have many other things to do. And we're also limited by the size of our own staff. But what we come down to is, as was expressed by Island, that is, we want a responsibility expressed that has not been expressed to date in our judgment. We want other elements, and all of these are contained in this request for proposals, the elements that we consider important. Now, if we are going to halt this process today, and that is the desire of some of you, you have to express yourself more than business as usual. And
See,
that is what's evolving.
Yeah. What I was looking at was we already, I thought, had made some preliminary programming allocations for this year with a 10% set aside, wasn't it, Tim?
They're next on your agenda for today.
Yeah, to take final action. But we certainly discussed the concept before. And the concept set aside $456,000 for this public access and community programming goals. We set aside $210,000 plus for the educational channel approach, and the KVIE was around $100,000. The one radio station, KXPR, at $15,000, which is not very much, and the government, all the government programming together for all the entities at about $150,000. And then we set aside a 10% figure, if that's what we stick with, to look at more specialty programming or more creative ideas, and that's we probably need to expand on that. But in looking at that, I don't find anything inconsistent with those kind of allocations and wanting to look at the first bite of the biggest one of all, the almost $500,000 one, and going for an RFP on that at this point. I think that's the way to proceed. We are starting into a new era, and we are going to have to probably eventually look at the other chunks, but I agree with Lorville. I don't think you can just do it all in one single year. I would really be intrigued as to what kind of responses you would get, whether those responses, Terry, would begin to finally move everybody in that direction. They might. Just going with an RFP just on even two might get us there. So I don't see any conflict in going ahead today with the RFP and beginning.
Or in terms of direction, in response to your question, I think the evaluation criteria that we've got in our staff report are appropriate and very good, and I think we should certainly hold Access Sacramento accountable, and these are the measurable criteria that we ought to hold them to over this next year. And if they don't meet these criteria, then we know we've given them a measure, or at least a handle on measuring how well they're performing. So if you're looking for ways in which to hold them accountable, I think staff's outlined that out very clearly for us. And I support them. I think they're great. I think that we ought to make sure that they have policies in place that implement these criteria. And that's the tool we need.
But you could also say, Terry, that what you were doing by that is looking at the sole source again for every single channel as is, and where do you find any impetus in there for anybody to do anything creative about trying to come together?
Well, again, my point, Isla, has been that all along that this group has been in existence for a long time, and they have the network in the community. And the criteria that we've listed here does require them to branch out and to meet those community needs. And if you want that sense of competition, then let's go with Mr. Cox's idea and invite everyone in for that process. And then maybe they will come together with the $1.5 million
That's why I say there's
proposal.
nothing in here that says that you can't get to that step. What you're doing are taking the first steps.
Mr. Panay, you have not had a chance to express your opinion. We invited if you would like to make a comment.
Well, I think I agree with Supervisor Johnson, Grantland Johnson, and Supervisor Collin. I believe this is the first step. Access Sacramento can very well come in and be a proposer. I do believe that we should, over time, phase in the rest with an RFP process. It's been 5 years, and I think that's plenty of time without competition. And I think now is the first step to that competition. So I think we should get on with it.
Toby, do you have a comment?
I'm in accord with the general idea of going ahead, getting this particular RFP released, and then I fully concur with Dave Cox that we should put the others in equal, or Grantland also stated this, competitive frame with the process by having them submit RFPs for their respective areas of interest.
We could split this then on any kind of vote. I'm going to ask if there is a motion to adopt resolution number 93, which is attachment 3, Sacramento Metropolitan Cable Television Commission, a resolution approving a request for proposal and its related activities. Is there a motion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, before you do that, it's been moved and seconded, but let me say to you that I want to reiterate what I said in the initial stage, and that is that I was not prepared to vote for this resolution until such time as that I was reasonably certain that this board was prepared to go ahead with the letting of all of these on an RFP. Now, I've kind of heard that said, but I want to be absolutely certain in my mind that.
Why don't you phrase a motion?
Well, there is a motion. There is a motion on the floor now. That's the
reason I did that. We have other items. Okay. We spent an hour and 10 minutes on this, and I then wanted to introduce your topic. I didn't want to. It has to be split because it's another consideration.
I understand, and I'm just trying to get in my own mind a reasonable. A reasonable consensus in my mind as to what's going to happen there before I vote on this. That's the primary.
What is the motion?
The motion would be to adopt this resolution calling for RFP related to what we've been discussing today. Mr. Cox and others want the assurance that we would also use the same process in due time related to all of the grantees. That's what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you offer a modification to this motion then and see if we get a vote? You amend the motion.
Now, who made the motion? I lost.
Brantland made the motion, and I seconded it, and I agree with splitting. The only reason I agree with splitting the issue is because I think you have to come back and talk about the timeline.
Yes.
And
that's
what direction you'd give
we can direct. Let the direction maker. Let me ask whether or not he can place some sort of wording in there that would accommodate coming back at a future time with this other.
Well, I'll accept it as an amendment to the motion that we would direct staff to bring back a timetable on RFP and the other contracts.
Good. That's
I don't know if the second one.
You had a second on that now?
That's fine.
Okay, she's accepted for an amendment.
Just so we're going to be able to look at that whole thing later and begin to say how we're going to define what are going to be the goals that we're going to be going out for.
That'd agree.
I'm comfortable that
public access.
I'm comfortable that that we can do that.
I believe, Mr. Chair, I believe that the others contract comes up in July.
June 30th, all contracts expire.
June 30th, so I suppose we're going to have staff report back to us with some type of plan of, for example, extending those contracts for a year, and in that year period, doing an evaluation, going through an RFP process as time would allow during that period. That might be one.
That probably is practically what will happen. But I think we would want to, the motion as I amended it would authorize effective direct staff to come back with a suggested approach to doing that, which would take into consideration the kinds of things you just articulated.
And let me just ask, Granlund, is it your thought that this RFP can be completed by April the 1st?
No. I want to talk about that. I think that's too tight.
Today's the main motion.
Yeah, I think it's too tight. I really want to have some adjustment on that.
Well,
maybe talk
with
about
respect
that. I don't
to
know what the staff. That's awful tight.
With respect to the resolution, the timelines say March 5th distribution, April 1st due by 2 p.m. with the backup data. I just think that that's unreasonable.
I think it's unreasonable too. I was going to, because you raised that. I mentioned that I agree with you in that observation. I would ask staff, could we give a little more time? It's awful tight. You talked about, can you extend that portion? I'm trying
I'd like to get a comment from our executive officer.
I'm asking for some clarification as a maker of the motion, if we can get some room here, Orville.
Yeah. The pros and cons of the schedule were this, that because this issue was surfaced, this is the second public hearing, I felt that general public awareness of what was coming forward was already out there. Two, the RFP is relatively straightforward. It doesn't necessarily have the depth. I see in my mind that the RFP would be responded to by existing entities. So I believe, one, the schedule could be met. Two, if it's your desire to add more time, we could add more time. The other side is that the existing contracts expire on June 30th. It's reasonable, or it should be expected, that we make decisions and have the new entity and or resurrection of existing or whatever you decide to do in place in time to pick up at June 30th. If you wanted to slip the schedule out a month,
maybe 2 weeks. Add it to
no problem.
Make it,
2 weeks, I think, is what I was thinking too. They'd put it mid-April.
Yeah, and you probably could always stay on schedule with that.
Would you want to have a special meeting to receive the presentations then, rather than April 1st? Have a April 15th meeting, or wait?
Fine with me.
As the schedule was suggested, in order to facilitate your time, the proposals would due April 1st, and every proponent would then make a brief presentation to you right then that day in this room. That was to get out in the open for public discussion right away, all the pieces. Would you want to meet then 2 weeks later?
I would think that. I'm sorry.
Let me just say to you that I too have read the list of people that you're going to distribute this to. Now, it may very well be that you're going to get some responses, but the fact of the matter is that there are a whole bunch of folks here who probably are not even aware of this, who might respond. And it just seems to me that we ought to either go 2 weeks or another month, 4 weeks, and I don't think that it cramps you quite as much as you might think that it does.
We could shorten the transition time and make the respondents, or make the RFPs due then on May 1st?
May?
Or at your May meeting, whatever date that would be. May 6th.
May 6th.
And just slip the schedule by 30 days? Make a decision at your June meeting?
I would think we would, in all honesty, want to extend the present contract. If I could.
If you want to do that, we can do that. That's a major kind of negotiation. It has been in the past. If you want to do it just for a month or something like that, we can do that. But I think it would be easier. There's probably more transition time here than realistically we needed anyway.
Dave, I would add two weeks to the April 1st date.
All right.
Stick with the schedule. I would think that May 6th You could have the hearing. Transition could begin shortly thereafter.
That would make April 15 meeting date.
Yeah.
You then want to meet was the question. You'd meet on April 15th, or do you want to go to the May meeting out a month?
It's up to you.
Whatever.
We can slip them all 1 month.
Slip it all 1 month. That doesn't mean trying to get you on the calendar for another meeting, which is quite difficult.
See, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, that'd be more pragmatic.
Let it slip a month.
Okay, that'd be more pragmatic then. So May 6th, the verbal presentations and receipts.
That'd be correct.
April 15th, what is the whole, so May 6th is the deadline, is that it?
May 6th is the deadline. May 6th would be the presentations. You would make decisions, or we'd have staff analysis decisions at your June meeting.
They shouldn't screen, but then the board decided to go one step further.
Is there consensus on that then, that we would add literally a month to the deadline of April 1st? Okay.
Is that clear? Okay.
Okay, you want to repeat the dates one more time? Everybody write them down.
We would...
Let's go ahead and issue the RFP today.
Right. That would go out tomorrow. May 6th, verbal presentations, RFP due by 2 p.m. in this chamber. June 3 would be grant award a commission meeting, 2:30 in this chamber. Pick a date. June 15th, begin transition. June 30th or July 1st, transition completed.
Okay. We now...
So transition completed when?
July 1st.
July 1.
July 1, okay.
Yeah.
We now have a motion to adopt the resolution, and with it the understanding as to dates that we have just set by consensus, and secondly, that the RFP process by timeline to be furnished by staff for next meeting will be a part of the process. All of that's in this motion. Are you ready to vote?
Ready.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Gratman Johnson?
Aye.
Toby Johnson?
Yes.
Collin?
Yes.
Yee?
No.
Cox?
Aye.
Castanis?
No.
Panay?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion has carried. Thank you very much. It's been a very profitable time to consider all of these elements. We're now to item 3, grant agreements.
Mr. Chairman, members, this topic is very much on point with what you've just been discussing.
May I interrupt? I failed in one courtesy here. Mr. Hayward asked to speak after the vote on this item, and as a courtesy to the chair of Access, I granted that request.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Michael Hayward, and I am chair of Access Sacramento. Now that you have determined to proceed with the RFP process, at least in connection with the community programming and public access, I would like to assure you on the Commission and the many groups of the community that have depended on us over the past 6 years that Access Sacramento will certainly respond to the RFP. We'll do everything in our power to meet the goals and objectives of the Cable Commission and the community at large. In this context, I'd like to add that we intend to apply for both the community programming and the public access functions. In our view, there are obvious advantages to having one entity administer these functions while operating each one separately. For example, it's clear that it would cost less and be more efficient if one organization could combine equipment maintenance, record keeping, playback, scheduling, training, just to mention a few of the activities, instead of duplicating these efforts with more than one entity. I would go further, Mr. Chairman. If Access Sacramento is successful in its submission, we pledge to explore promptly with the other grantees any possible consolidation of facility and personnel that we can implement, both in the interest of maximizing the efficiency and minimizing costs. Finally, a word about who will be guiding the activities of Access Sacramento in the future. We are forming a Blue Ribbon Advisory Nominating Committee and will invite the following distinguished Sacramentans to serve: Ann Rudin, the former mayor of the city of Sacramento, Butch Cox, Community Relations Manager of the Sacramento Bee and President of the Oak Park Summer Concert Series, Suzanne Nissen, Dean of Instruction at American River College, Gert Tipton, Dean of Instruction and Affirmative Action Processor at Cosumnes River College, and Dennis Mangers, the Senior Vice President of the California Cable Television Association, which is the parent group of cable companies in Sacramento. Their task will be to advise Access Sacramento on the structure and the membership of the new board. You may recall I reported last month that a number of vacancies had occurred as a result of resignations. As you may also know, Donna Parsons Lane, as vice chair of the current board, and I, as chair of the current board, have been serving since the very inception back in '87 when we drew up the contract. We've decided to leave the board. I personally am secure in the knowledge that I have acted in the best interest of Access Sacramento. But it would seem to me that at this critical juncture, by anticipating a virtually new board and new leadership, I hope to create a situation which will make it very difficult for the Commission not to consider us as the leading candidate for the community programming and public access entities. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Hayward. And now to item 3. Rich?
The issue of the grant agreements ties directly into what you've just been discussing. The 5-year grant agreements from 1988 were extended, should have expired in March, were extended until June this year. I proposed to you last summer, and then in more detail in September, the development of a performance or contractual mode of allocating resources. The interest of the staff recommendation, the staff thoughts in this, were one, to bring competition into the existing structure of our grant allocations, and to let you know that I've been very upfront and very clear that I've been extremely uncomfortable with the entitlement formula, the fixed allocation formula, as we've come to the term now. We have gone through and, at your direction, developed 2 complete grant agreements. The entitlement grant agreement is the one based on the existing structure with some important administrative enhancements. The entitlement grant agreement now includes clear-cut provisions for audit, clear-cut provisions for the Brown Act, etc. The entitlement grant agreement, however, is still one which is key to the word entitlement. It is before you for approval today as a boilerplate to go out and fine-tune negotiations with each of your existing grantees. It will also become an attachment to the RFP. Again, going back to our process for franchise award, our style, our practice, and it's been very successful, is to put our contract out with the bid to see exactly what it is, what the rules are that we intend to play by. So the entitlement agreement is before you. It is a fully functional, complete, and recommended as is grant agreement extension with appropriate additions that weren't there in the first and the grant agreements from 1988. This has been essentially in the same form since mid-December, early December. There have been a few comments by your grantees, but it's my understanding in working with them that the entitlement agreement, except for the fine-tunings, is fine. By fine-tunings, I mean there are some aspects of each agreement that are specific to each grantee that will have to be adjusted. So that's there before you for approval in boilerplate. Separately, upon your direction in September, we proceeded to look at a new way of administering and allocating your community programming resources. That was to introduce some competition into the existing structure. That focused on only 2 pages, 2 sections of the entitlement agreement. Essentially, the 2 agreements are the same except for 2 pages. And in a series now of 4 or 5 meetings with the other grantee managers, we propose or put before you an alternative to the entitlement process, one which begins the transition away from the fixed allocation funding, presents to you a process which brings competition from your existing grantees and or outside grantees with the suggested 10% allocation that you made in October. In developing this, the hardest part was to define the review process on how decision-making would ultimately get to you. The key point is that that process does not bind you, it just provides recommendations to you. It's set up that each of your grantees would pick 2 people to be raters to review the individual grant applications. The process before you proposes the evaluation criteria. It sets a structure up where the high and low ranking or rating for each application would be discarded, and then the scores then totaled without those to try and control for inherent biases which may exist. It confirms that the Commission is the ultimate decision maker, meaning that the recommended rankings of grant applications in this process are not, again, binding on you, and establishes within it a process where the participants would report back to you at specified times on that process. These 2 alternatives are completely viable. They will work fine. The performance or competition process, as I sometimes refer to it, is a companion to some of the other discussions you've had this this afternoon, but is strongly recommended as a way of bringing about change. I think it's a healthy approach. The process will focus on the goals you've approved in October, and we hope will provide you as decision makers another level of detail about the specific activities, community program activities, which are occurring. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The recommendation for you today is to approve the boilerplate entitlement agreement, the boilerplate performance agreement, and then the process and forms that go with the performance agreement as a separate action on your part, so that we could amend and refine this process without having to renegotiate the agreements in the future.
I have 2 questions about it. It's a generic agreement, is it not, on the entitlement grant agreement?
Yes, it is.
So that you could determine if you wanted to do this for 1 year.
Yes. In both agreements.
So that you could look at a transition if you wanted.
That's correct. There is no termination dates written into either of the models.
And the one thing then about the performance grant agreement, the way I read it, and perhaps I'm wrong, it sounds like it is totally driven by whatever applications come in.
It is.
Is there also an ability on the part of the Commission, after we would hear public input, to perhaps set some target areas where we would like to see some proposals come in? And I'm reminded again of the one contentious issue that the letters are still floating around and everything else, and I recognize that the grant that we might or might not be able to do anything about it, and I've brought it up before, is the ethnic programming issue, where you have a lot of people who, for instance, really wanted to see more Cantonese, and we're pitting people who want to see some Cantonese programming against those who want to watch news in Mandarin, against another group that wants more Portuguese language programming, and one who likes to see more Italian language programming. And they can't find enough room on what the Sacramento cable system itself is doing. But if those groups were to come to us and say, why don't you set some targets out here and see if anybody will respond to them to produce some of that on our local channels, could we do that?
It's certainly legally permissible for you to do that.
Okay.
And we could build that in the process in the front or at the decision point. The recommendations, again, aren't binding, so when the Commission makes its grant awards, you could decide to reserve funds for a particular type of programming if you wanted to.
I think it's almost built in that if any of you or any substantial consensus of you say up front that you'd like to see some things in this area, you're going to see those. You're talking about a market-driven approach that's going to respond to what it is that you suggest you're going to like to see.
Okay. And at what point, probably the budget process is the best process rather than in these kind of performance agreements to bring forth the other issue of that I think both Jimmy and I brought forth before, that for many people in the community who are concerned about those actions that are taken by planning commissions that never get
to, for instance, the City Council or the Board of Supervisors, they want to see us televise some of those planning commission meetings. And I recognize there's limited time on that government channel anymore with all the different governmental bodies that are being televised. And we've got a big demand by people who want to see the state legislative hearings.
Really?
There are. You know, believe it or not, there are people who really want to watch those. They don't want to
veto that one up front.
Yeah. But you know, I know that costs money. That costs money for any crew to go set up and televise that. And yet we've got to figure out some way to accommodate when we hear those kind of requests from the public. You know, why aren't we seeing those planning commission meetings? Those items never get to you, and yet these planning commissioners are acting in our name. So.
There is a report back under item 7 in today's agenda on that issue, and I've recommended that.
But I'm trying to figure out where it goes.
I recommended that become part of the decision-making process for allocation of funds, and I recommended that item that you direct staff, if you approve the performance grant concept and the allocation, that we put Planning Commission coverage on Channel 14 in the pot, in the competitive list, and that we Metro Cable 14, changing hats, participate in the process openly. And that when you make the decision as the commission, you get to decide, or have the opportunity to decide.
So competing demands.
Exactly. Channel 14, this versus whatever else might be proposed in front of you, be it ethnic programming or whatever. That's the best way that I could come up with a fair process that got you to make the key decisions.
Well, I was looking at it in terms of whether that was really the best way to go and whether the alternate way to go would be just right up front, take it in the budget up front if we really felt strongly about it. So those are the only two ways that I could see either. So.
Does that mean the RT board as well? Well, I mean, no. You could start.
Well, they asked didn't you ask the RT board to come up with the funding?
Yes. RT is
on
one
a meeting when I wasn't there, or I don't imagine you were there or something, I guess RT decided not to come up with the funding?
That's correct.
This was some time ago?
Yeah.
4 or 5 months. Last fall.
You weren't there and I wasn't there, I guess. You remember being there, Grantland?
You can see in
RT board.
Yeah, I did.
He participated.
Yeah. It was RT and city schools had the same problem. They weren't meeting in this chamber. We couldn't make the schedule so they could meet in this chamber. Therefore, we couldn't do it because of the cost of being at a different location.
Oh, I see.
It's in. We can look at item 7 when we get to that.
Yeah.
That concludes.
We could move the RT board meetings here, and you can do it.
We could do it this year. I don't know about next year.
We could raise your ratings on the channel by broadcasting the American River Fire meetings. But
oh, she really could.
Not a bad idea, by the way.
Not a bad idea.
Are there other comments from the commission or questions? We have one speaker from the audience. Are we ready for that speaker then? Janet Gross. 3 minutes.
Hello again. Coming before you, my primary concern originally was the quality of things that I was seeing on TV because of things that I thought were too sexually explicit and too vulgar. Looking through the agenda item and looking at this thing, what I want is some kind of quality control, and this looks like it would be a system of having more quality control. And whether it's done through a performance agreement, a separate grant, or some of these same things are applied by whatever agency is overseeing 17 and 18. I just wanted to address that. I think this is a pretty good idea, and whether it's used in this exact format or it's used elsewhere, it looks like the goal is quality control over not just content, but the kinds of things that are on. So.
This pleases you then, that which you see in...
Yeah, I like what I see in it. I don't understand fully how it would apply. I mean, I see separate entities getting grants and coming in and putting things on TV, and there's more control over what's put on, both content and just overall quality. If any of you saw any of the excerpts from Dinosaurs, it was really, looked like a preschooler had filmed it. Some of the things that I've seen on 17 and 18 are not very well done, and some of the things are very good on it. And I would like to see some system set up where there is more control over the quality of things that are put on. Technically, content-wise, and not just from the side of things that are sexually explicit. So it just looks like a good evaluation process, and I might ask that when you're looking at the RFPs that come in, they might have something like this in them for the group that would be addressing you. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Janet.
Well, I'd like to address that just a little bit. My understanding is that whatever the process that would come from the, whatever decision the board finally makes on how to or who to is going to operate the two channels, the community programming and public access channels, this boilerplate agreement would be the type of approach we would take, and whoever that would be able then to look at the performance criteria to see if they wanted to have some of that funding too. Okay, but the other funding is a set aside. The one thing that entitlement agreement, just so there's no misunderstanding, at least on your part, is the entitlement agreement really is an agreement that is based a great deal on trust of the entity, because other than audit, which we're going to have in here now, we're going to be auditing how funds are expended. It is not a performance agreement. We set aside some money for a performance agreement, which is very different from the approach taken in an entitlement agreement. Under an entitlement agreement, other than seeing the budget and having a trust in the board and the decisions that they've made as to how to operate that channel, we've decided to go ahead as a body with proceeding ahead with these entitlement agreements, hoping that this will work. There's no guarantee that in the future we wouldn't move more and more towards performance agreements rather than entitlement agreements. But during this time, this is the way we're going to go, and it does entail a great deal of trust. But I think having the ability to do audits is going to be some help in there too.
Mr. President Collins, to clarify, there's one point I want to catch. The RFP does not prescribe an access channel and a community programming channel.
No, it does not, but you could do it that way.
It wouldn't have to be a full channel in either case. It would be up to the proponent to say we'd allocate the resources depending on the
that.
need.
Yeah, you could, theoretically, you could do community programming over a good portion of both and allocate a soapbox to a certain amount of time. But you know, I think there's all sorts of possibilities depending on how you would want to operate jointly or independently two stations, but two channels.
Is there a motion to adopt the resolution approving boilerplate line agreement?
Second.
Has been moved and second. Further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Captain Johnson?
Aye.
Toby Johnson?
Yes.
Collins?
Yes.
Yee?
Aye.
Cox?
Aye.
Castana? Panay?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Going to change the routine here a moment and call for number 5 and then go back to 4 so that the gentlemen who have presentations can get on to other business. This is a franchise license update.
Yes.
And Mr. Ruckert, are you here to present on behalf of Sacramento Cable?
You mean item 4 was going to take any longer than just making a motion?
Pardon?
Was item 4 going to take any longer than just making a
I don't
motion?
think so.
I'm just changing the...
But if it's only going to take a motion, let's just do it.
Let's get out the way.
Let's get it out of the way.
Clear the deck.
time that it takes a motion.
Yeah, well, I'll move item 4.
Second.
Oh, you will? Well,
Yeah. Then it's done.
Tim, will you hold up for 30 seconds? You bet, boss. We have a motion and a second to adopt item number 4.
We've discussed this over and over again.
Okay.
Fine. Clerk, please call the roll.
Ratman Johnson?
Aye.
Toby Johnson?
Yes.
Collins?
Yes.
Yee?
Aye.
Cox?
Aye.
Castanis? Panay? Fletcher?
Aye.
Motion carries.
You now follow a very successful vote. Kim, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
He loves coming to our meetings, and he loves sitting through them, right?
Absolutely. The height of my week. I'm going to be very brief because it was only a month ago that we addressed you, so we won't go through all those telephone stats and things like that, but I am very pleased to announce that we have activated
2 runs of our new fiber optic deployment, which made some press, and of course we have now activated the city of Galt with about a 17 mile run of fiber optics. And actually that community now is positioned for some very highly technical upgrades in the near future. Our TVRO site, that is the site of our large satellite dishes, and our head end, which is located around 13th and N, now have a complete fiber optic distribution from there to the head end. We will, as I mentioned last month, we'll build approximately 33% of our entire fiber trunk plant, and that'll be completed by the end of this year. And by the end of a 36-month period, the entire system will have a fiber trunk distribution system completed. That will immediately position us for digital compression, which will give us the ability to compress our signals into at least a minimum of a 4-to-1 ratio, or as many as an 8-to-1 ratio, which means our channel capacity, when this is concluded and activated, we will have, in today's terms, 77 channels of cable TV that can be compressed to well over 250 to over 500 channels. The purpose of this is, one, obviously, long-term positioning of our business here in Sacramento, and to provide more channels, multi-channel pay-per-view, more or less having the ability for people to watch a movie at the time that they want to watch it, rather than when we want to show it. So in essence, a #1 movie on our pay-per-view service may be available within 15 minutes of their desired time of being ordered. We will also have the ability to provide new multimedia services that are distributed through fiber optics, such as PCNs and delivery of PC-delivered products, for instance, software being downloaded into your home so that you could update your home PCs and things of that nature, all of which are very high technology type services that are being tested right now. And of course, we want to be positioned within the next 36 months to be able to do that throughout our 4,000 miles of plant. I'm very pleased about that, but unfortunately, because of a question that was asked of me last month, which was somewhat taken out of context by the press, I would like to straighten that out, that this fiber optic deployment is not the reason or the result or will be the result of any future rate increases. The rate increases will be dependent upon operational needs and cash flow requirements for the company, but not because of deployment of fiber optics. Hopefully, the fiber optics that we will be deploying will keep us very much in step with the future needs of our community. We have also...
That's comforting. That's comforting enough.
Absolutely, it's comforting. But I didn't say we wouldn't have.
I know you didn't.
Okay. As far as other things that we've done, we've initiated a $350,000 automatic dialing system that allows us to have the ability to communicate with thousands of our customers daily, so that we can inform them about their bill positions, so that we can remind them that bills are due on time, and other things of that nature. But it is in a service to help our customers to stay customers. Research projects. Rich, we've offered to Rich and to the Cable Commission, we are going to embark in a very extensive research project that will find out the viewership, the real viewership of access channels, as well as many other channels, and also find out what type of programming our customers want to see. We'll be doing that via telephone. We'll be doing that via a total bill insertion to our subscriber base and focus groups. And we hope to get this activated very soon, and hopefully by mid-year have some data that will tell us the type of programming that your constituents and our customers really do want to watch.
When is that? You said May?
No, it's by mid. It should be concluded sometime by mid 1993, okay, or late third quarter 1993.
Mid to late 1993. Okay.
but we will be using all types of surveying equipment in order to go out and really get some good solid research and find out what channels, of the channels that we do offer today, what they do like, of the channels we don't offer today, what they do like, and what type of programming and hours they would like to see programmed. And from that, I can assure you that will be the decision maker for any future programming or programming changes that may take place in the future.
I have a request from a friend of mine who raised this last night. He's interested in getting the Mets back on TV. I thought to point that out to you, and you know, I was requested to deliver that message to you.
And it was well delivered.
Yeah. Okay.
We are obviously...
I'm not a Mets fan, but he is.
Thank goodness.
I get requests from people who've moved here from different places, and what they really want is they want the news from the different places they've moved from.
Well, one time we did that.
We have a whole channel just full of news from the different parts of the United States. If you recall, there was a point in time when we did have lots of channels from Boston and Dallas and various places like that, but unfortunately the federal government makes the decisions as to whether affordably you can deliver those types of products, and we have elected that we'll stay with WTBS. It was just the news, that's all they were interested in.
UGN, actually. Thank you. Brian Gruber is here to talk to you a little bit about a few other subjects, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. I just add that I am working with Brian and Kim to add to the survey that you did 2 years ago. We had a baseline survey, so we're trying to coordinate that so what Sac Cable and we can gather will give you some data to make decisions with as well.
Before I allow Brian to speak, I wanted to speak to you about the GALT fiber optic pathway that now exists. It created a much clearer picture. The definition is better. It's a softer tone. The only way I can describe it, it is easier on the eyes. I've talked with several people in our community. The overall performance is, of course, I think the reliability of fiber optics versus the 26 amplifiers that had to operate to get the signal to GALT heretofore. So what I find is that this is an increase in your capabilities on our behalf, and we do appreciate it.
Not only is it an increase, Mr. Chairman, but the reliability factor is going to be substantial, because now where you had, you're almost going to be a cable engineer pretty soon, but with 20 amplifiers in cascade, every time that there is a opportunity for a break in the line, it's going to be around those amplifiers because they're connected there. Now you have a solid piece of fiber optics that runs this full length, and the quality will be superb, and you are positioned for the future, and furthermore, you will have better reliability and fewer outages due to wind and other situations out there in GALT.
We were glad you experimented on us first.
You definitely needed it.
Brian Gruber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be very brief. Briefly on the research project, we will have, with Meta Research doing the project, the first major quantitative study done using telephone surveys probably by mid-May, and we will be including questions that Rich will be giving to us on a variety of issues, particularly Metro Cable. Just a few updates on some things that we're doing. First of all, on Monday, we will be changing our lineup on Channel 2, the international channel, so that Cantonese and Mandarin News will be back on the air as of Monday. We will be, in order to provide diverse programming for a range of multilingual communities, there'll be Cantonese drama on at 7, Cantonese news on at 8, Mandarin news at 8:30, Vietnamese news at 9, another hour of Mandarin programming at 9:30, Korean news at 10:30, and then Japanese and Italian programming after that. We do look forward to the recommendations from the advisory board that we'll be putting together with all of your assistance, so that we can provide a thorough range of multilingual programming. And we also do agree that long-term we do need to provide more options and more programming as our community becomes more diverse, and not only from a public service point of view, but from a marketing point of view, that's extremely important to us. But I do want to let you know that as of Monday, the Cantonese and Mandarin news, which is of importance to a lot of people, after being taken off the air due to KTSF's programming changes, will be back on the air. Secondly, we had a wonderful program this morning with Court TV. Court TV will be televising an event that we did this morning with a number of local luminaries dealing with local and national issues such as television in the courtroom and various types of legal reform issues. They've also committed, besides the event that they did this morning in Sacramento with several people, including Senator Lockyer, a local judge, and some local journalists, they'll be doing a national town hall meeting in Sacramento in the next few months as soon as we can define an issue, and that'll be televised nationally on Court TV. Third, in our continued efforts to try to do a better job of talking to our customers, besides the new monthly newsletter that we rolled out a few months ago that we put in the bill, we started a video newsletter that will be on once a month as well to tell our customers what's on the service, and we would also like to work with Rich to put some information on there about Metro Cable as well. Finally, in terms of informational programming, C-SPAN provides audio services that we are going to be investing in the equipment to get on the air using the second audio program channel. There are two services. We'll put one on C-SPAN 1 and one on C-SPAN 2. The first audio service is the BBC World Service, a 24-hour-a-day informational services. If you ever drive through San Francisco, listen to KQED FM, I think at 10 o'clock at night on weeknights. And
I subscribe to KQED FM, but I have to go listen to my car radio.
Well, I love the BBC World Service, and they only do an hour or so a day of it. We'll be having it on 24 hours a day at no additional charge as an additional audio service on the SAP channel. C-SPAN Audio 2 has new services in English from all over the world, from about a dozen different nations, and that will be provided free as well. And that's about it for my report. If I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
I've been observing you on Channel 25. What's your stage name?
Pretty soon I might need one, but we know we'll get a high cumulative audience because we keep repeating it every hour, so it's a great promotional strategy.
Well, I think it's great that your boss was able to work you into that position, and we just need a stage name, you know, if it turns out that you're Mad Max or something like that, we'd like to hear about.
Mr. Chairman, anything you suggest, I'd be happy to adopt that name immediately. And next month we hope to have Kim Ruckert's premiere on the program as well, so Sacramento should look at it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to just make one comment to Mr. Gruber. Regarding the putting back the program in the Cantonese news onto your channel, I certainly am very happy to hear it, and I'm sure
It took a lot of weights off your back, right?
I'm sure Alec Collin appreciates that too, because it just took a lot of phone calls and a lot of letters that has been sent to me off my back. I appreciate your cooperation in this matter.
A pleasure.
Yeah.
Also, your advisory committee is really good news to this commission that you have formulated and will use an advisory committee continuously for this channel. I think it's a mark of maturity on your part, and it's a mark of really wishing to know what the community wants. And in listening to them, you're going to be continuously doing your very best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Mulligan is here from Cable America. I understand that they wish to report that everything is on schedule and where it's supposed to be, but if you have questions of Mr. Mulligan, he's here in the audience.
About to call on Mr. Houghton of Cable.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Bob Mulligan. I'm the area manager for Cable America, Mesa Air Force Base and Rancho Cordova. I'm here to provide a progress report regarding the status of Cable America's license in the service area of Sacramento County. We have at this time fielded areas slated for construction for all the engineering and make-ready requirements needed to accommodate our cable TV facilities. We have completed all of the agreements needed with the utilities involved for attachment to the poles, and we have contacted Sacramento Cable concerning the coordination of the rearrangement or the rearrangement that may be required by them, and have received no reply to this date. We plan to begin our make-ready and construction for CATV facilities beginning mid to late April, and anticipate activating our first customers in June of this year. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have or redirect those questions I cannot answer to our Director of Operations.
Any questions? Thank you for your report.
Thanks very much.
This completes that item. Item number 6, extend RFP to all community programming entities. Have we answered that?
I think we have.
We have.
I think we have, Mr. Chairman.
So that we may go on to item number 7, staff status.
We've covered a bits and pieces of this item now. I presented for you what would be, if this was our budget time, the staff recommended rankings of government meetings to be carried on the channel. Band 1 I see as the base. Those are rankings that would fit within our base budget. Band 2, and in keeping with your policy to carry all the planning commissions for all of your constituent jurisdictions, would exceed our budget. And that's why I'm saying that I'm recommending that we put that into the competitive process with the allocation as you just approved. I want to call to your attention that Band 3, meetings cablecast from this chamber that we are currently doing, would likely fall off the funding list. There's no decision at this time. Just to apprise you of the process we'll be following. Secondly, and Supervisor...
No, but if we didn't elect Band 2, Band 3 could be funded?
Yes. I will present, or I would envision wearing Metro Cable 14 hat to be submitting each one of those bands to the competitive process. Band 2, Band 3, and possibly Band 4.
Because you don't have enough, because you won't have enough money to do Band 1 and 3?
We'll have enough to do Band 1, but to do all of Band 2 or all of Band...
I'm not talking about Band 2 we're not now doing. Correct?
Band 2 we're not now doing.
But we are doing Band 3.
That's correct.
And so if we did Band 1 and Band 3 without Band 2...
We're okay.
We would not quite have enough because the allocation you just approved under item 5 reduced our budget by 10%. It would be almost there, but not quite there.
The allocation you just approved is 150,417, so you can see, you can just put the numbers together yourself.
Any other comment or question?
I would like to, second item under the staff status report was a concept called agenda highlights. If you have comments for me as thoughts or ideas on enhancing or expanding what we do in Metro Cable 14, please let me know. My feeling is that unless I present to you new ideas for Channel 14, I'm going to assume what we're doing now is what you like. But as we get a new idea, we'll... if there's something you'd like done differently, let me know. This was a proposal that came out of a limited amount of staff time as a way of bringing you as elected officials one step closer to your constituents on key items in a randomized process that was open and hopefully healthy.
Chairman, I think it moves in the right direction. I think 14 is somewhat of a stagnant channel. I mean, understandably so.
You want me to bring it up?
I think this is refreshing that we're trying to add a new mix here.
With your direction, we can enhance this a bit, take it to the next step, put some dollars behind it, maybe talk about a pilot, a test.
Does that complete your staff report then? Is there any other item or question to be added to it?
Well, I think pursuing his last comment, we ought to give him some direction to to further explore this direction and see what is possible in terms of testing some pilots.
We'll put some thoughts together.
Item 8, public opportunity to discuss matters not on this agenda but within Commission jurisdiction. Is there anyone who wishes to speak?
The request that just came up there.
Please come forward.
Rich, that was the last item. Mr. Mulligan.
Okay.
Please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Jerry Paulson. Again, I'm here on behalf of the Alliance for Community Media. And just to let you know that after hearing your discussion, the Alliance for Community Media is going to be proceeding along the path that we have chosen, that is to have a firm Plan B in place in the event that Access Sacramento is not a viable host for the 94th convention. To do anything less would be fiscally irresponsible on our part. The National Convention, in large part, funds our entire yearly budget. Apart from that, and this is not really planned, In listening to the discussion of Access Sacramento, its pros, its cons, its responsiveness or lack of responsiveness, I hear terms being bandied about: accountability, quality. And this probably is belaboring the point or telling you things you already know, but just a quick distinction. All the other channels that are mentioned are basically institutional channels. Access Sacramento on the public access channel is the one channel where an individual may come without the sponsorship of an organization and create his or her own program. When that opportunity is given, by its very existence, that is not a safe opportunity, nor is it necessarily always nice. And I hear some concerns being proposed on the part of some of the commissioners that accountability and quality may become euphemisms for political correctness. And in proceeding with the RFP and in evaluation of all further RFPs, according to Mr. Blair, content nor censorship of content cannot be a consideration of this commission. Is that correct? Is that what you said at the last commission meeting?
Mr. Chairman, whatever I said is on the record. If the commission wants me to respond, I will, otherwise I won't.
Well, I think you simply make your comments at this time rather than discuss it at this time.
I'm not
observation.
I'm not understanding the process, that there's not direct interchange allowed?
Well, it's too late for that. We're giving you a final opportunity to express an idea that is of merit to you, and it can be discussed at a later time. But please complete your thoughts.
Okay. For future, I would ask that, if the position I understand is correct, that the commissioners do take into account that there's a fine line between responsiveness to the community and censorship.
And what?
Censorship.
Censorship.
Thank you. That completes the comments that we have from the public. It completes the agenda this day. Does any commission member have further comment before we adjourn?
Move for adjournment.
Second.
Those in favor say aye by adjourning. This meeting is adjourned.
Do we leave these books here, or do we take these with us, or what do we do with these?
Take them with you.